Shalom, I am Rabbi Shaul Praver. You're watching Rabbi Rock. Once again, we will be speaking shortly with our guest, Jerry Gordon, an activist on college campuses and many other places, advocating for truth in the dialogue of events taking place primarily in the Middle East, events of subject matter being terrorism, the issues of Israel, the Palestinians, all of these different matters. Jerry has been an activist bringing truth to the dialogue and actually being an individual that is seeking peace in a very, very meaningful, wholesome manner. I want to talk about recognizing your friend, recognizing truth, recognizing what's good, recognizing what's not good. We can't be wishy-washy in the face of evil. We have to be able to define something for what it is. We have to be able to call fascism, fascism. We have to be able to call racism, racism. And we have to call lies, lies. One of the questions and things that people think of, they're very perplexed. I, for one, am very perplexed. How could Nuremberg laws ever have arisen in Germany and throughout Europe? How could the Holocaust ever have happened? How did we allow it? How did these measures ever pass muster? How did people ever accept these extreme actions by Nazis? And the answer is, we don't have to look far. We just have to open our eyes and see what's happening today, right here in America, today in Europe, today in the Middle East, today in the world, to understand how things emerged, how things devolved in the 30s and 40s. We have a tradition in Judaism, the Seder plate. We have some bitter herbs on the Seder plate, and one of the items that you can use as a bitter herb is the lettuce. And people, I've always wondered and asked, why is that okay for a bitter herb? Lettuce is oftentimes sweet, it's delicious, put a little bit of dressing on it, it's wonderful food. It's not bitter at all. Why could that be a bitter herb? And the answer that the rabbis in the Talmud give is because the stem, the inner core of lettuce is very bitter if you ever have bitten into the stem of a lettuce stalk. And it's a very important lesson as far as how fascism is formed and why it was a poignant symbol on our, and continues to be a poignant symbol on our Seder plate. Fascism doesn't just plop itself down one day. It has many outer leaves that are sweet and inviting, and still other leaves, until it works itself into the core, and then we realize that it's the bitter herb. And that's why I say it's very important to recognize what's good, what's evil, what's right, what's false. And it's not always so easy. Things that are organizations that are called organizations devoted to freedom could be organizations that are really devoted to tyranny. Organizations that are called organizations for solidarity might be organizations for the obliteration of another nation, another people. It might be a calling for homicide, for mass murder of other people. It's very hard to recognize what's true, what's good, what's real, what's phony in this world, because the outer leaves are sweet and inviting and capture us. How can people today that know anything about Israel, its accomplishments, the Jewish people, say things like Israel is a Nazi state, or how could anybody say anything like that? And the truth is that it becomes like a mantra, and it has some kind of a mystical effect when a person hears over and over again these kind of phrases. That's why I always like to say as often as I can that Zionism is beautiful. Zionism is the ingathering of our people. We've prayed for the ingathering of our people in Israel for thousands of years. We didn't just make this up 50 years ago. So just like the people, the African American community said in the 60s when I was growing up, black is beautiful, to break some negative associations that racism had created for African Americans. So in the same sense, I say Zionism is beautiful. Jews are cool. So on that note, we're going to go in and find out exactly what's happening on these campuses. We're going to get into the specific nitty-gritty of this. So Jerry Gordon, welcome to the show. Rabbi Rock, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Shalom. All right. We talked a little bit last time about the Palestinian Solidarity Movement. Sure, the Palestinian people have a right to want to have solidarity and have self-respect, even a country. Many people, including the Kurds, would like to have a country. These are all good things, but is it really only a Palestinian solidarity movement? What comes along with that bill?
Well, I think what comes along with that bill is a variety of things that we would view as being dangerous. One of those is basically condoning what I call direct action. That's a euphemism. And many college presidents have said that if you're coming on my campus to talk about direct action in the Middle East, which means support of things like suicide bombers, then I don't want you around. But the reality is that's what they do talk about in their closed sessions at these various Palestinian Solidarity Movement conferences on college campuses.
Okay, so direct action is a buzzword for terrorism. Blow people up.
Correct.
Direct action.
The other thing that they talk about is infiltrating Jewish student organizations on college campuses. The best example of that is Hillel.
Okay.
At the Duke PSM conference that was held this past October, they talked in very glowing terms about what they could do. There were two things that stood out as being sort of heinous. One of them was to convince, quote, Jewish attendees at these PSM conferences to go back to their campuses and frankly get on the boards of Hillel so they can turn them around, because Hillel is, quote, a democratic organization. That's rather bizarre. The second is a wonderful program that's been launched by two major world-class Jewish philanthropists called Operation Birthright, taking Jewish college students and young adults to go back to Israel to learn what the country's all about. Mm-hmm. Well, in the case of the PSM conference, particularly the one at Duke, they talked about using it as a means of infiltrating their activists.
Okay, they're going to piggyback on the
exactly right.
The program, our program.
Right,
yeah. And
that corrupts the original purpose of what Operation Birthright was all about in that regard.
Well, they are entitled to their point of view.
They are under academic governance rules. The reality is that free speech says that you're entitled to say views that are basically noxious. That's one thing.
Okay.
You cross the line as a member of a faculty in a major university when you go and do something called intimidation of students.
Okay.
And that intimidation can run from basically the kid knowing that the grades that one has are very much highly dependent on what this individual has to say.
Yes.
Now, that's particularly true in the social sciences, politics, international relations, and things of that sort. It's less true, obviously, in the hard sciences and mathematics and engineering sciences in that regard.
Yes. Would that be sort of like what a particular professor would say to an Israeli student in Colombia? How many Palestinians did you shoot when you were a soldier?
That's correct. And in addition, there's a more reprehensible example of that, of actually the head of the Middle East program at Columbia, Professor Debishi, who physically went up to the face of one of his Jewish students, a gal from Barnard, and basically looked her in the eye and said, "You can't possibly be a Semite. Your eyes are green."